pleasure to pray with you or pass some information along. Now, we have Pastor Kevin and Clarissa Essett with us, so God bless you guys. Thanks for being here. Amen. Why don't we start off a little bit? Why don't you share with us your guys' testimony, and we'll get rolling with that. Who wants to go first?
Well, I would just, first of all, I was just elated to be here and have an opportunity to tell somewhat of our story. I will say that my story differs from yours a lot in that I didn't have a model upbringing at all, did not have a father present in my life, and a great deal of what I experienced in my childhood. I say oftentimes that I've lived through more in my childhood years than most adults have seen in their lives as far as trauma and trouble and different things of that nature. And so some parts of that I would like to, or that I'm privileged to have an opportunity to be able to share with that, not just the downside, but the upside that of being able to find God in the middle of those struggles. So,
Amen. Amen. You want to add anything to that part of the story?
I don't have that story.
It is.
I had pretty good upbringing as a child. I knew my father.
It is so amazing how God can rescue and redeem whatever our environment is. Sharing about your upbringing, we have a friend and he told about his upbringing. I thought, oh my goodness, how does a person even come out of that childhood sane? You know, let alone love Jesus and have a family and do all that. So any words you guys can give, any word of encouragement on this Father's Day weekend, or tell some more of your story, or let us know how did God bring you up out of all that?
Well, I brought a couple of props that I'll sort of share today, but the first of which is a can, and I'll call it the can that changed my life, and I'm not advertising Libby's, but there's part of the story for me started when I was about kindergarten age, and I remember my stepfather coming home one time, and he was very upset because my brother and we were outside playing in the backyard, and we shouldn't have been. Well, he was carrying a bag of groceries, and you know, he took a can, and if you just feel the rim of that there, but he took and he just almost like a baseball, just hurled this can, and it busted open the back portion of my head, and you know, of course, it was, you know, blood everywhere, and it was, you know, a horrific scene. But he told me the next day going to school, or kindergarten, that I was to wear this hat. And when I went to school to put this hat on, I'm not to take this hat off at all, you know. And of course, my teacher wasn't going to let me get away with that. So the first thing that she says to me is, Kevin, when I get into class, take the hat off. So I wrestled back and forth with, you know, telling her no, and, you know, and all of that. And then finally she comes over and she grabs the hat off of my head and sees a big open wound in the back of my head. And she just starts screaming and crying, and, you know, and that was the last day that I was home, at least for a while, before I was returned to my biological grandmother, who raised me for the greater portion of my childhood. But from there I was ushered into a foster home, and you know, there, you know, I don't know how the foster system works right now, but I know at that stage, basically they took me, they dropped me off, and that was my new home, you know, and I had to adjust very quickly, you know. And of course there were other kids that had troubled past, and within that, you know, so we were in the home, and there was one particular guy, which brings me to the next prop here. But there's one particular guy who was he was a big bully, you know, and he you know, would come and you know, just do everything that he could to agitate me, you know. And finally one night he went to sleep, and I went into the kitchen, and I got a big cast iron skillet, I guess about like this, you know. And I went into where he was, and I hit him in the head with this cast iron skillet. Don't worry, I didn't kill him. But I mean, I brought this because this represented a whole portion of my life where I felt like I was fighting, you know, and I had to protect myself, and I mean, I spent a greater portion of my childhood just in this defensive mode. You know, I couldn't I didn't have regular relationships, and I probably drove away people that were really sincerely trying to help me because I was in that mode of defending myself
Right.
all of the time. Well, after a while of being in that scenario, I was replaced with my biological grandmother who raised me throughout school. But the abuse didn't stop. Of course, you know, the setting changed, but it was still much the same situation. And this in particular, this is the eye of an electric range, you know, and you know, that, of course, that's what we call it. I don't know what other people might call it, but I remember I had an abusive family member that took my hands and placed them on the eye of this range, you know, as hot as it could be, and placed my hands on the eye of this range, and it's burned through every skin, of layer of skin and muscle tissue all the way to the bone. And I don't know if you guys can get a close-up at all, but I want you to see the scars, and you know, but it burned all the way through. And they said that cosmetically they could make my hands look like hands again, but that they would not be functional, you know. And so, you know, I went through a number of surgeries, skin draft and otherwise, where they worked to, again, cosmetically make my hands look like hands again, but
Right.
I was not supposed to be able to use at least these 3 fingers, you know.
Right.
Again, this is probably one of the most traumatic things, but out of this probably comes the greatest testimony, which is what happened in succession. Now, I didn't play an instrument. I sang and directed a choir, but as far as playing an instrument, I did not play at all. But I was in a church service, and there was a lady here in Indianapolis by the name of Dorothy Goodson. And she attends Christ Church here, and she prayed for me during a revival, and she told me, she prophesied to me actually, and she said, son, not only, of course my hands are wrapped in gauze bandages, and she says, not only is the Lord going to heal your hands, but you're going to be the next musician at this church. You know, of course, I'm thinking, you know, I mean, if anything, I know I play Mary Had a Little Lamb, but that's just about it, you know. And she called me forward, and again, with my hands wrapped in gauze bandages, she took a bottle of oil. Now, this isn't those little cute things that we got now.
Sure.
This was the big bottle of oil, and she just took it and she poured it on the bandages, and it just soaked and ran down. Of course, I thought I was cute that day, but you know, by the time it was done, I had oil just running all down my arms and sleeves and everything else. And while she was praying for me, I could feel the healing. So it didn't take much for me to believe God for the musical part to come, you know, because I could feel a sensation in my hands while she was praying for me, you know. It didn't take long after that before the gauze bandages were off, and my pastor sat me down and he says, now, Kevin, I want you either in the I want you either on the organ or the piano in every service. And of course, I'm thinking, well, and for what, you know? And I know it wasn't overnight because I can remember some pretty pitiful services, but I'm telling you,